All set.
So thank you for joining one South Coast Small Business Seminar Series sponsored by Bristol County Savings Bank. Today we have Darren Sprague from Bristol County Savings Bank speaking to you about cyber hygiene for small business. Darren is an accomplished cybersecurity risk and controls executive with more than 25 years experience addressing strategic information security, technology, operational, and compliance risks experience across multiple industries. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the chat box and we will moderate after the presentation is over. Rick Kidder, Chief Operating Officer of One South Coast Chamber, will moderate the questions. And if you are not currently muted, please place yourself on mute now. And Darren, thank you for being here today, and Joan Medeiros as well from Bristol County Savings Bank for sponsoring today. We greatly appreciate your efforts today. So Darren, I will now turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Mike. Good morning, everyone. I hope everybody had a good long weekend for those of us that had one. Like Mike said, I'm going to talk about cybersecurity for small business today. I think, historically, small business has been a smaller target in, because it's more of a small fish in a big pond. But nowadays, with resource constraints, especially with hackers knowing that you don't have the resources, the technology that some of the larger companies have, they're starting to turn their focus a little bit more on small business. If you look, quick overview, they're becoming more sophisticated. Last year, according to the FBI, there were $7 billion in losses as a result of scams. They'll only continue to rise. And you look, the largest increase over the past 5 years was between 2020 and 2021. I would attribute a good portion of that to COVID with the number of people working from home. But it has gone up every single year since 2017, and it's only going to continue to rise. The tried and true approaches, those continue to be highly successful, and those are the areas that we'll touch upon here. Phishing, business email compromise, ACH and wire fraud, etc. Those continue. We're seeing that industry-wide right now. There's a lot of that happening. There's a lot of debit card types of fraud, and there's many ways for people to get the information that they're looking for to do this. I think one of the alarming, well, I'll say alarming for lack of a better term, is that only 18% of small businesses believe they're likely to be scammed. Nowadays, it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when people are going to get scammed, whether that's a small business, even the largest corporations out there are starting to find problems. If you look at some of the things that have happened, the Colonial Pipeline issue a couple of years ago that shut down, significant amount of natural resources coming. The critical infrastructure, which include banks, includes your electricity, all of that, those are being hit, especially in today's day and age with what's happening between Russia and the Ukraine. We've seen a lot more of that, even to the extent where it wasn't something that was highly publicized, I don't think, but the Ukrainians were hacking the parking meters in Russia to get that information. If you go to a parking meter nowadays, you can insert your credit card, put that in there. They started hacking the Russian parking meters as a way to retaliate against the attacks that Russia's putting against the Ukraine. Just quickly looking at the numbers that you see, and I don't know why why the call out on the percentage of victims isn't showing right now, but the largest percentage of victims is through phishing. We'll talk about that a little more, but that's that's something that's the easiest, probably the oldest means of trying to scam people that's out there. It's the simplest. It doesn't take any effort on the part of the scammers, and it's still highly effective. From an overall percentage of losses, business email compromise makes up 35% of it. That's an area that is more prevalent to, to the small businesses. Obviously, you see it quite a bit. And like I said before, with small businesses not necessarily having the people, not having the segregation between roles, and the attackers figuring out that they may not have the same level of technology controls in place, starting to see that continue to go up as well. So why don't we start with business email compromise? I'm sure many of us have seen these things come through. It's a situation where the criminal sends an email. It looks like it's coming from a known source, somebody you know. It looks like a legitimate request. May come from your CEO. It could come from a vendor with an invoice saying we need to have this paid or it's late. Or it could even be something as simple as click here to unlock your online account. And once they get that information, now they can spoof, pretend to be you going forward, start sending emails to other folks. This is something that's I'll say a lot easier and a little more prevalent as companies and people move to the cloud. So for those people that use Office 365 in the cloud and that's their email, once you get that stuff, it's a lot easier to impersonate people going through that because it's not sitting on a server at your business. Most of us, and especially during COVID, did a lot via email because we didn't have that in-person interaction. Some people were remote, so it was harder to get a hold of people with their phone numbers. A lot of times you are calling cell phone numbers to do business. So it made it a lot easier for people to send emails coming from a person or an organization or the government, especially with the loan programs that were out there at the time. Talked about fraudulent invoices. In a case like that, you'll get an invoice that says, hey, this payment's past due. Click here. They'll ask for you to enter your email, your password, to your online banking, to your network. It could be anything. And from there, they're capturing it. And now they've taken over your email. One of the things that they've done is they've determined that it's a legitimate email. A lot of the communications that come through, the first step is to determine that it's a legitimate email, a legitimate cell phone number, a legitimate phone number. And that's the first step for them to verify that something is actually worth them using. How can you protect yourself? If you're on a computer and you put your cursor over the URL, it should pop up and show where it's really coming from. It should show up the actual reply to email. It may say, you may get an email that says that it's from Mike O'Sullivan, but if you put your cursor over the URL, it's going to say, it could say some generic email address that if you reply to, now they have gotten the information that they need to take the next steps. If it's a phone call, you can pay attention. A lot of times the scammers, they get angry if you don't give them the information that they need. They start throwing out there, threatening you, threatening to shut accounts, threatening to call a superior. They can get very belligerent, especially if you're not giving them the right names. So listen to the tone of that email. If you're dealing with a customer and it's somebody you know, or Mike or Rick, and they call you and you're not used to dealing with them where they're belligerent and they're angry and putting a lot of pressure on you, chances are it's not them. In those cases, you'd want to hang up the phone. If it's an email, you'd want to call them directly to verbally confirm the request, not to a number that's in the email. If you have a number on file or the legitimate Chamber's website, you see numbers on there, those are the things you want to call. The other thing, avoid attachments. We all get attachments. We get PDFs that are invoices. You want to make sure that you're not clicking on those to offend, to implement something onto your system. If you're not used to getting an attachment from somebody or an attachment type from somebody, same thing, question it, confirm the request. Hey, Joan, did you send me this invoice? Did you send me this registration email? Is this legitimate? And if they say no, immediately delete it. If you do use something like Gmail or Office 365 where it's on the cloud, they do have functionality where you can report that email to them as a phishing attempt. And they'll apply the blockage of that particular email or that domain that it's coming from across all of their customers so that not everybody continues to get it. It can block it so that nobody else in your organization can get it. And it's a good way to do that. There's also companies out there that provide security awareness training that will give you that functionality for free as well. Send it to them, they'll analyze it. They also have the capabilities to go into your browser and block that particular link or email or domain within the browser so that anybody that has, say, Google Chrome, that's blocked. The next big one that we see, and we see it, we hear it throughout the financial industry. It's nothing that's specific to any particular bank or financial institution, is the ACH and wire fraud scams. Same thing, they'll trick you into sending them money electronically. I think you'll see a trend throughout here that phishing and account takeover and things like that, that's the biggest way that they're getting to do things. Again, it's the easiest way for them to get in. They prey on the human element. The vast majority of scams are effective because of a human. The technology will protect things a little bit more, but when you're in a rush, you're at work and you get a reply to me instantly, I need to have this, that's playing on people's emotions and they're more likely to respond in that case like that. So you're going to get those. Same thing, you get a phishing email that can install malicious software. Well, now they're obtaining your login credentials as you log in to your online banking account or anything. You log into your credit card account, or if you pay a bill to the town, they're gathering anything that you enter in your PC to gather those credentials, and then they can start using those going forward. Couple of examples: the spear phishing, which is really going after pretending to be coming from a CEO or somebody in a level of authority, will send you an email that says, hey, I need to make this payment. Here's the link. Go to it. It needs to be made right now. And you go to it, you enter in your credentials, your username, your password, and now the criminals have it. The other thing, like I just mentioned, is that it'll install malware. Malicious code is called malware. It'll install that on your computer, and until you identify that, it's going to continually run in the background, capturing everything you do. One of the things that they can do also as part of that is if you have your username and your passwords stored in your browser, you enter in something on a website in Google Chrome, it pops up, says, do you want me to save this password? You click yes. Now that is stored somewhere. When the criminals come in, they're going to look for that. That's another very simple way for them to identify what your usernames and passwords are, especially if you've given up your credentials already for your network and they have those. They go in, there's a function in Chrome and all of the browsers where you can view the passwords you have stored. If they have those credentials for your network within your business and they're asked for the password to unlock all of the passwords, which puts them all in clear text, they have that, they're going to enter it. Now they see everything you've stored in there. whether it's your Amazon account, your credit card accounts, your online banking. I'm sure a lot of people do store that information in there, which makes it obviously open for everybody. One of the things, some of the things that you can do to protect yourself: initiate your transactions under dual control. Have more than one person involved in the transaction so that you don't have one person that submits the ACH or wire, then approves it, then releases it. That I know can be difficult in a lot of organizations, because you may not have the resources to be able to do that. And it's those things like that, which is what the attackers prey on. They know that there's a number of businesses out there that don't have that level of control in place, so they prey on you, and that's how they do it. Monitor and reconcile your accounts daily. It's I think the days now with things being online, as soon as a transaction hits, you can go online, you can see the transactions, the amounts. We're far past the days where you had to wait until you got your monthly statement to look at and see what the transactions are. Now you can do it in almost real time. You make a payment, it's going to hit, it's going to show pending. Then when it hits, monitor those on a daily basis. Over the holidays, with the increase in online shopping and the debit card fraud that the industry was seeing, in a lot of cases, the scammers were taking the approach of, people probably aren't going to see these. They're small dollar amounts. They'll get their statement in December and then they'll figure it out. By then, they've got the money. The money's gone. Secure your devices. Everybody should have some sort of firewall software on their tablets, on their laptops, desktops, smartphones, anti-malware software, antivirus, anti-spyware. A lot of these things, you look at, Norton or McAfee, they have the tools that are all combined in there. And if you have those on your network, and if you have those on your devices, you at least decrease the likelihood that something's going to get through, because those tools should identify most of them. An easy one, again, that comes into the human element, is never share your online banking credentials with anyone. Don't write them down. Don't walk over to Johnny and say, hey, can you sign in? Here's my username. Here's my password. Now they have it. You don't want to do that, because even in the days of you trust your employees, you trust your friends, you just never know, especially in this economy, with inflation and people having less money to spend. You never know what somebody's going to do. Trusting people isn't a control. You should also never use the same password. I know people use their same passwords across multiple accounts. That's something that I don't think will ever go away. But at the very least, don't use the same account for your online banking accounts as you do for your email or the website to your vet to make appointments on. That's something you want to try to avoid. Ideally, you can also get a password manager, which will store all of your passwords in there that you can set up. Then you don't need to have the same password. You don't have to say, well, I can't remember all of these passwords. You have it in a central storage place on your computer, on your phones. You then have to remember one password. For those that don't use password managers yet, from a functionality standpoint, you can open those. You can copy the password, paste it into your browser. And even in a lot of cases, you can click the link through your password manager. It will fill it all in for you, but you've had to authenticate yourself into the password manager first. Don't access things on a public computer. Libraries have public computers. You go to Starbucks, they have public Wi-Fi networks. You want to avoid doing anything like that, especially, anything where you're entering a username and password. Stay off of those. Even something like Netflix or any of the streaming services. If you're on an unsecured network or you're on a public computer and you enter that information, the next person that sits on that computer if you haven't logged out, is now accessing all of your accounts. If you do need to log on, or you do need to use an unsecured network, a good practice is to use a virtual private network. There's many of those out there. Some of them are free. Some of them also offer paid subscriptions, $99 a year. In the grand scheme of things, even though somebody may not have been hit, is $99 worth the peace of mind that you would have, that you're at least a little more protective. And then be suspicious of emails coming from your financial institutions. Most banks, I'll say most because obviously I don't know all banks, they're not going to send you an email asking you for any information as far as personal information, your login, your username, your password. We all have that. We don't have your password. Those are still secret, but we have usernames. If you have online banking, we have all of your personal information. So you get an email from somebody or a text message from somebody asking for this, just delete it, ignore it. It's not legitimate. Or if you're not positive, pick up the phone, call your bank, call a number on your debit card, go to their legitimate website and go through that to make the call. Don't call phone numbers in emails. I'll tell you, there was a few months ago, there was a PayPal scam going around. I do know people that fell for it. And it said, you owe this invoice. Call this phone number so that we can address it. We can take care of it for you. You call the number. They say, all right, we'll work with your bank. What's your login information? They took it. In this particular instance, the person didn't give out their username, but because they made the call, it was legitimate. They sent an email. The person clicked on it. It installed malware, and the PayPal took over the computer and started to capture everything that this person was doing. It resulted in $19,000 being transferred between accounts. Fortunately, this person's bank caught that. So, well, it's kind of strange that a 75-year-old woman is all of a sudden taking $19,000 out of the bank when that's not part of the pattern of their spending. So we got caught, but it's the same thing. They're not going to ask for that type of information. If you get something from a PayPal or a Venmo, call a number that you know is a legitimate number. Don't do anything from the email. Government imposter scams. This is one thing, especially during COVID, where you had the payroll protection loans. You started to see an increase in a lot of those things. In this instance, you'll get a phone call, an email. You might get a social media message, direct message through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or even a letter. Sometimes the old snail mail letter still works, saying that we're from the IRS, we're from the Small Business Association. You're eligible for a grant. Click here, go here, give us a call. We'll set you up with this grant. If you don't follow through on things, it's the same thing. They'll threaten to suspend your license. They'll threaten to fine you. They'll threaten to take legal actions if you don't pay the fees or the registration or whatever dollar amount they're looking for. That's, again, it's the scare tactic. They're trying to act on the human emotions. You get a call from the Social Security Administration saying, hey, your benefits are going to end. And that's a real scam that's out there. Your benefits are going to end, and we're going to suspend it unless you do X, Y, and Z. Then they're going to ask you, what's your Social Security number? What's your mother's maiden name? They're going to ask you a lot of the things that legitimate organizations, when you call, are going to ask for. A lot of times people will ask, they'll say, we'll give you a grant, $99. You're eligible for this grant for $10,000, $15,000. Say, oh, wow, that's a pretty good deal. Let me pay it. Now they have your credit card number. The government isn't going to offer a grant for a fee. At least not, they're not going to proactively call and say, hey, for a fee, we'll give you this. You could get a call, an email, or a text from the Social Security Administration or the IRS. This is a big one right now. Tax season is just starting. we're all getting our W-2s, 1099s. The IRS is going to call, say you owe taxes to us. The IRS isn't going to call and say, we need this information. You owe us, you owe us this amount of taxes. Give us your social, give us all of this information. They're not going to call you and ask for that. The SBA loans and grants, a lot of that happened, especially in the PPP days. People are still getting calls saying, hey, we have this loan, we have this PPP grant for you that we can give you. All we need is a little bit of information. That particular program has ended. So that they're not being offered anymore by the SBA, at least at this point. So if you get a phone call saying, hey, you're eligible for this type of grant or this type of loan, you got to question it. Ask, call the SBA, go on their website and research, contact your bank, say what types of programs are out there and is this legitimate? If you do get a call, hang up immediately. Even if it doesn't turn out to be a scam, the people are going to call you back. And same thing, you say, let me give you a call back if you think it is legitimate. If you get a message through social media or your email, don't respond to it. Nowadays, with so much social media out there, they're sending messages with links and questions through that social media, trying to get a response from people. And that people are on their social media all the time. So you may say, well, I need to react to this. The government's not going to call, email, or text you asking for money or personal information. Similar to banks, the government has that information. If they're calling asking for it, you have to question why. You know, Social Security Administration has all of our Social Security numbers. So why are they asking for it? They should have it. Don't wire money, send cash, or use gift cards or nowadays cryptocurrency to pay. Somebody calls and asks you to go out and buy gift cards for them and send them to them, and they'll accept that as payment. That's going to be a scam. Gift card scams go back a number of years. It's another common one. It's a common one for phishing or internal. You know, your CEO or president sends you an email saying, hey, I need $500 in iTunes gift cards. There was a scenario recently out there where it was to pay a bonus to people. We want to give our employees a little extra, so go out and buy $500 in iTunes gift cards, and I want to give them to you. Send me the numbers, etc. It wasn't legitimate. You know, if I'm part of, I mean, personally, if I'm getting that phone call and I haven't heard anything about me getting any kind of reward, I'm going to question it anyway. It's not something that typically is going to be asked of you directly. Don't give out your financial other non-public information. I mean, it's you know, I think it's just common sense to really think about it and not give it out, especially if somebody's asking over the phone. You got to be careful with that. Don't trust your caller ID. Caller ID way back was a little more trustworthy, but now I can spoof anything. So I could call from my cell phone, change it to say it's Bristol County Savings Bank, call, pretend I'm from the bank, and that's how a scammer's going to get it. Or, you know, it could come from the bank and somebody may know that I'm friends with Joan. Well, now they know she works for Bristol County. They're going to call her, spoof my caller ID, so it looks like it is coming from me. So you can never trust your caller ID anymore. So it looks like it's coming from your bank and they start asking you for some of this information, or the IRS is calling, don't provide that information to them. And then of course, don't click on links in unexpected emails, text messages, or social media. If you're not expecting it and you haven't talked to somebody, chances are it could be a scam. It may just be spam, which is today's chain letters, people just reaching out, blasting emails out saying, hey, I've got this, would you be interested? Don't click on any links. If you're not expecting it, again, call the person that it's coming from or supposedly coming from and ask them, did you send me this, before you act on it? Phishing, you've heard throughout, phishing is one of the big things that's come up. Most people are familiar with it. They're manipulating somebody into doing something they shouldn't, such as providing a username or password or link. Emails, everybody is relatively familiar with email phishing. It's the main way that they get attacked, but there are other avenues that people are using. Text messages. There has been some text messages going around purporting to be from various financial institutions saying, hey, this is the fraud department. Please click here and log into your online banking to tell us if this is a legitimate charge. You think it's a text message, looks like it's coming from your bank, it says it's coming from your bank, so you do it. Most likely, that's going to be a scam. And that's what we call smishing, because texting is SMS, so we call it smishing. The other thing people do nowadays is phone calls. Even if it's not somebody live, they'll call and ask you information, but in a lot of cases, you might get a robo message, or even if they leave a voicemail. It's called phishing because it's voice phishing. And even if they do leave a voicemail and they ask you to respond via your keypad, you've now got that, they've now got that information from you if you do that. Web browsers, same thing. They're launching stuff that you log into, or you go into Google Chrome, something pops up and says, hey, you need to do this, or, you know, if there's something wrong with your computer. They've now launched, that's the phishing attack. You've given them permission to take over your computer. Another one that has come up, and it's in the emerging slide that I have a little bit later, is QR codes. It's called phishing. If you think back to the days of when COVID first started, and then when things were opening up, they stopped handing out menus at restaurants. They put the QR codes on the table for you to scan to get their menu. Well, scammers figure out if they peeled that up, put their own down there, they might be able to get information from you. I don't know if people remember a couple of years ago during the Super Bowl, there was an ad with, it was just a QR code on the screen saying scan here. The more and more people are using those, the scammers have figured that out. You go into a restaurant, you scan that QR code, their menu is going to pop up. If you scan it and something else comes up asking you to create an account or log in or something, chances are that's a scam. That's one of those things. We're going to see it. Unfortunately, it's a little more difficult to identify the QR code scam, because there might be some identifiers in that code that show you it's legitimate, but a lot of times it's just a big square. It doesn't tell you who it's from, doesn't tell you what it's for, so you want to be careful on that stuff. Same examples. I think you'll see a trend. There's a lot of the same examples coming through for each one of these, which just illustrates that a lot of times it's the human error and the human element that takes care of things. Inspect the URLs, who it's coming from. We've talked about that. Pay attention to the tone of the email. Similar to somebody calling you, if you're used to having a pleasant tone in an email from somebody from the bank or from somebody within your organization, and now all of a sudden they've taken a nastier tone, that's a pretty good indication that somebody's got a hold of their account. Same thing. Pick up the phone, call them. Did you send this to me? I'll even say if we'll take it in the reverse. If somebody is typically a little rougher around the edges of an email, and all of a sudden they're sweet as pie, I would even question that myself. Avoid attachments. Don't reply. I think one of the things that people consider is they don't consider that replying to an email without a link or an attachment is really a risk. It is. You reply, they've now identified this is a legitimate email address. Their next follow-up is probably going to be to ask for more information. We get a lot of those. People get a lot of those in general. Hey, respond if you'd like to have a meeting. I have this particular product or service. Respond. Once you respond, they now know it's legitimate. Now they're going to start to follow up with you. The big one, which quickly has a large financial implication is ransomware. That's something that is all over the news. Colonial Pipeline, a lot of these big companies now, a lot of school districts are seeing this. I think right now, between healthcare and education, those are probably the largest areas that are being targeted right now, because they're critical to running the country. They're critical to towns in the states. And same thing, they know that the criminals know that they don't have as much protection. Malicious software gets installed. So again, you look, phishing, infected websites, online ads. That's a big thing. You know, these social media giants and even small companies, they get online ads as their way to make revenue. Those can contain malicious code. So you click on that particular ad saying, hey, Target has 50% off today. Click here to get your coupon. That may or may not be legitimate. You click on that. Now the malware is on your system. It's locked your computer. It's encrypted everything and said, hey, until you pay us ransom, we're not gonna release the information that we've obtained. System vulnerabilities is also another one. You may have all of the protections in place, but if you have a vulnerability within, say, Windows that hasn't been patched, they're looking to take advantage of those, and those can be the front door or even back doors for people to get in. I like to use the analogy of your house. Your front door may be locked, so you have a false sense of security, but you haven't locked your back door. So now the criminal's going to take advantage of that and go around and check the back door. Now they're into your system. They're in your house. Now they're in your system. There'll be threats if you don't pay the ransom. We're gonna leak the information. We're gonna post it on social media. We're just gonna completely wipe everything out. You're not gonna have any of your information. Paying the ransomware is always a losing situation. It's generally not advised to pay a ransom when you get this. In a lot of cases, if you do happen to have, if you don't have cyber insurance, they're not going to pay it anyway. And the last thing you want to do is be out even more money than they have. So how do you protect yourself from all of this? First thing, security awareness and training. It's good to have continual reinforcement of here are the different risks, here are the threats. You know, ransomware, here's what it is, here's what it does. Provide some training to say, here's how you can recognize it. You know, there's training awareness companies out there. There's a lot of online training through the Federal Trade Commission and through the government agencies that can be taken for free, that you can point people to. Always keep your software up to date. Automatically have it updated if that's one of the options to choose. You look at your phone, and if you have an iPhone, you can set it so that every time Apple releases an update, it'll automatically install. You don't have to worry about it. Avoid public charging cords and ports. This is a big one. I think that a lot of people don't really think about. You go to the airport, and they have those, or even your car dealer, and they have those ports, charging stations. Say, hey, plug in, you can charge. Well, a lot of times what's happening now is those are being taken over. You plug into that cord, you've now infected your phone or your device that you're trying to charge. So you never want to plug into something like that unless it's with your own cord. If you're at the airport and you see the USB port to plug in and charge your phone or charge your laptop, don't use that. Plug it into an actual plug with one of your own plugs. That's the safest way to do it. Only download applications on your devices from reputable online stores. Google Play, iTunes, the App Store from Apple. If you have a Kindle, Amazon has their own app store. You want to avoid going to a random third-party store that says, hey, get this game, download it. you've now put yourself at risk, and you could get infected. And back up your systems frequently. If you are a victim of ransomware and you have sufficient backups, you're able to restore from those and won't have to worry about losing all of your data because of the ransomware. So that's probably, one of the most important things is make sure you have everything backed up, whether it's daily, weekly, at the very least, it should be weekly, so that you only have a week to go back if you need to restore something. But definitely back up your systems, even if it's just your personal computer. There's places that you can move your files to the cloud, your Word documents, your pictures. Even back those up, because if somebody gets a hold of your computer, and even though it's a personal computer, it still could contain sensitive information that you don't want to get out there. Tech support scams. These go. I mean, these go as far back as I would say the internet. A fraudster claims to be associated with your software, with Microsoft, Xfinity, ADT. If you have a home security system, offering you technical assistance, they may call and say, "We've noticed you've got a problem with your connections." They ask for permission to get into your network. You say yes. You provide them the information needed. Now they're in. You could get a pop-up or a locked screen where they say, "Your computer's infected. Click here for us to help." Looks like it's from Microsoft. Got to be careful. Most likely it's not. URL hijacking or typo squatting. So that's a case where google.com, the 2 O's are changed to zeros, but because you're looking at it quickly, you don't notice that. An L or an I changed to the number 1, an E changed to a 3. Just these little nuances in what the actual URL is are easy to get past people. As I mentioned, you click on the things that come from Microsoft and it convinces you to provide remote access to the system. Similar to the within that PayPal example I gave earlier, this is one of the things that happened. So not only did they get the online banking credentials, they got remote access to this person's system and access to all of their files, their accounts, any passwords they may have. They installed viruses, things that would destroy the victim's computer. The other part of this too is in the next thing, they threatened to destroy your computer. This particular instance, they refused to give information to PayPal. They kept getting harassing phone calls from PayPal, threatening them with legal action, harassing, saying, "If you don't give this, we're going to call the police." And you know what this person did? They said, "Good, call the police, file a report, they'll contact me," and hung up on them. They'll ask for your credit card information to bill you for phony services. I mean, how many times people are getting calls from Netflix or any of these streaming services asking for payment for the bill for their new service that was given to them. Do that stuff online, call them directly through the numbers on their legitimate websites. How do you protect yourself? Ignore things, hang up on the unexpected calls. Don't call the number in an email. If you think you've been infected, or if you think you have a tech support scam and you have a security or an IT company that supports your business, call them directly. If you think you have a virus, call them, let them come in and help you and run the scans and determine if there is any kind of virus or threat on your systems. And never give your password to somebody to give them remote access to your device, or anyone that contacts you unexpectedly. So as we've gone through, I think you look at the themes. They're preying on humans. A lot of it's phishing related. There's multiple avenues for people to do attacks, but really it's if you use a level of skepticism or some level of common sense in some of these things that are obvious. If it's, if it's too good to be true, it probably isn't. Some of the emerging approaches that are coming out now, the hybrid attacks, that PayPal example that I was using is an example of a hybrid attack. They started with an email. The person called the phone number. Now it's turned into a phishing. So they've combined the two avenues of phishing to get the information they needed. And like I said, $19,000 was attempted to come out. Social media is big. One thing that popped up a few months ago is a scammer will go on to a bank's website, see who's following that person, or who's following that particular institution, identify that person. Now they know that they're creating a fake account purporting to be associated with the bank. They're now sending you direct messages looking like it's from the bank. You're acting on those, and now you've allowed the attacker into your system. And then phishing, the QR codes. That's relatively new. As I said, the more and more people are using those, the more and more prevalent it's becoming. All right, what can you do? First thing, talk to your insurance provider. There are insurance policies out there that cover cyber attacks. Typically, your general liability insurance that you may have isn't going to cover something like this. Talk to your insurance provider. They have risk assessments that they can help you with and checklists, and they can make recommendations on a level of coverage you may need. If you do fall victim, there's many avenues to report it. Contact your financial institution. That's number one, so that the necessary protections can be put on your accounts, holds, shut off your online banking. Call your local law enforcement. The Federal Trade Commission has a complaint assistant. You can call that number that I put here, 877-701-9595. And then if it's cybercrime related, wire transfer related, the Internet Crime Complaint Center, which is from the FBI, you can go into their website, ic3.gov, file a complaint. It's now registered. A lot of the statistics that I shared at the beginning all come from the reports that have come through that ic3.gov. See if they've been posted. So if you notice in the chat, the links that are in the presentation are being pasted into the chat for you to copy out on your own if you would like. Then what are some additional resources? There's a plethora of resources out there for people to access to help. Financial institution websites. We all have some sort of security and fraud section on our websites. For example, here, our website has a security section. It's got a section on e-fraud for individuals, e-fraud for business, a lot of good resources, a lot of links to a lot of tools, a lot of training. You're typically going to get a lot of that information. It's a one-stop shop. You can see what the current scams that are out there. The Better Business Bureau has a scam tracker that they record things in. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is a government agency. They have a cybersecurity awareness program for small businesses that you can go out to, and the Federal Trade Commission also has it, something for small businesses. So there's a lot of small business guidance out there. I'm sure if you go to the IRS's website, they're going to have stuff around small business guidance and things that they will or won't do when it comes to taxes. So I will stop there. We have a few minutes left, so I don't know. I'll open it up to questions if we have any questions in the chat box.
Darren, I've got a few questions for you.
Okay.
The first one actually isn't in the chat, but it's kind of timely. We keep hearing about how the government has asked or has actually required employees to no longer have TikTok on their government phones.
Mm-hmm.
You talked a little bit about making sure that you get your apps out of the Google Play Store, out of Apple Play. Yet those are very much available on those platforms.
Mhm.
So how are we as assured as we can be that when we download something from the Play Store, that we're actually not downloading something that can adversely affect us?
Right, that's, there's a couple of differences between the two stores. So the Google Play Store, because it's open source, anybody can develop an app and stick it out there. One of the things you can do in those cases is look at the descriptions, read the reviews about the app. If you see, just a handful of reviews and it looks like it's relatively new, I would probably avoid it. I think the one thing that Apple does pretty well in their store is to put an app in the Apple App Store. It goes through testing, so it's less likely that you're going to download something fraudulent or malicious from there. Not saying it can't happen. It has happened, but if you look at a lot of the headlines and a lot of the scams that have occurred and a lot of the infections, you rarely see it at this point that Apple products are affected. You may see an occasional MacBook vulnerability or something like that, but Apple does a much better job of locking things down than Google does.
Thank you.
And
Yeah, please.
and things like TikTok, it's a catch-22 because how much of it is government related, how much of it is political, how much of it is the media bringing it up, and it's very difficult to go through those. I mean, the safest thing is always not to use it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't use it. It's especially something like TikTok. That's a huge avenue now for people to make money, to bring in revenue, to get their ads out there. It's one of the biggest ones out there right now. So of course people are going to put stuff on there. It's really just making sure you're diligent before you do anything with it.
Well, and of course, that's where Mike and Joan and I do our dance moves. So a lot of us use our phones through mobile apps for online banking, and obviously you're in that business.
Mhm.
Are there vulnerabilities to online banking through mobile that are distinct from, or worse than going through a desktop?
There'll be different vulnerabilities because it is a separate application that's tied into your online banking. But similar to the websites and to what all of these vendors do, they stay on top of those vulnerabilities and they patch them as soon as they're aware of them. You're going to have that risk regardless of what site or what app you use. It's being diligent. It's having the automatic updates turned on that will help that. They are two separate and distinct platforms. The good thing on your phones too is the information is encrypted there, so it's going to be a lot harder for somebody to get into it and gather that on a phone than it is going to be on your desktop.
Chris Terry mentioned that he's still getting those PayPal invoices.
Yeah.
I know that we occasionally within our organization get emails all the time saying, I need for you to do me a favor. I need $2,500 sent over here. Sometimes it doesn't appear self-evident that they're trying to get something. There may not even be a link within those, but somehow it's creating a vulnerability.
Yeah, that's one of those examples where if you happen to call a number that's in an email like that, or if you reply to the email and even say, I don't know what you're talking about, they now know it's a legitimate email. Their next step will be to send you an email with the link.
Gotcha.
With an invoice to it, because you started the dialogue with them back and forth. So they're going to continue going back and forth with you until you stop doing it. And then once you stop responding and they realize they failed in what they're looking to accomplish, they move on to somebody else.
Mike O'Sullivan asked the question about how a restaurant or business can prevent their QR code from being, I guess it's squished. Yeah.
That's actually a good question. That's one of those things that if you look, they tape it on the tables. one thing I've started seeing in some of the places that I visit is they're actually hanging up hard cardboard things on the table, which is going to be a lot more difficult to replace. Scammer would have to replace that entire card to make it seem legitimate, whereas the ones on the tables, not so much. I would say restaurants, in my opinion, they should be going around making sure that things haven't been tampered with and verifying those things. But again, it's all part of the human element. They're busy. I know a lot of those establishments are very short-staffed, so everybody knows that, and they're going to continue to become victims of that.
One of the things that you'd mentioned that is extraordinarily important is backing up your systems.
Mhm.
We as an organization, for example, back up to the cloud on a nightly basis, and that allows us the opportunity, if in fact something were to happen that either corrupted our database or God forbid somebody got into it with ransomware, we'd at least be able to restore back to a point.
Right.
That is, I think a lot of businesses don't realize how important that is and how important it is that you test your backup.
Yep. Right. Yeah, no, it's very important. And, you don't have to test it constantly, but if you test it monthly, quarterly, even yearly, and just make sure that if you restore your backup, that you can access all of your files still and everything has come back. And even if everything isn't there, hopefully the critical files are there for you to access. But yeah, with the cloud in place and having Microsoft and Amazon and all of these different very large companies, they have the tools to be able to back up to. They have the controls, and they're audited constantly to make sure they have the right protections in place. I think one of the things with the cloud is you see in the headlines, oh, so-and-so's Amazon Web Services cloud was hacked. That doesn't mean Amazon was hacked. There are instances where the organization is responsible for patching the vulnerabilities, not Amazon. So in most cases, that's going to be the case. If Amazon or Microsoft are responsible for it, you're much less likely to have something happen.
There are a couple of comments regarding password managers. We happen to use one, and I noticed that John Danahy, who was a cybersecurity expert and on this call, mentioned that two of the most prominent were hacked in the last 60 days, one of which was LastPass, which we use. Are there ones that are more secure than others, better than others? On my phone, for example, I use Data Vault. That seems to work effectively, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's hard to say. I use one on my phone called Zoho. They all have similar functionality. This is where, in a lot of cases, where they store their source code can have an implication on it. If it's stored in the cloud, and that happens to get a hold of that. It's very difficult to say if there's one better than the other. What I would say is, before you select one, look at the reviews. Things like PC Magazine have reviews of the functionality, of the security, of how it's managed. I would probably focus on that and go out and look at something from industry experts to make an informed decision.
Excellent. Thank you. Wanted to thank you very much again, Darren. Thank you, Joan and Bristol County Savings Bank, for your support of these small business seminars. Katie has recorded this particular one, and we will be sending out the link to all of you who participated, as well as putting it within our YouTube archive, so that people have an opportunity to come back and view these as well. Darren, your expertise and your clarity were wonderful. We're very, very grateful to you. And Mike, did you have anything to add, or Katie, anything to add?
I just wanted to say thank you very much, Darren. I thought it was very, very helpful.
Good, my pleasure.
Wonderful. Thank you all for being with us today. This was excellent. We greatly appreciate it. I'm now scared to do anything, so I will go back to using an abacus and a slate. and see if I can keep my data secret. So thank you, Darren.
Thank you.